Good afternoon. How have recent historical events affected the course of research in organizational psychology and an example of an event and resulting outcome? As with most things in our world, science can be influenced by dramatic events. This century has already seen its share of drama. One of the most dramatic events happened on September 11, 2001. Most individuals remember where they were on this date due to the additional sensory processes during encoding, which is the process that allows us to remember negative events more than positive ones. This event is burned into our collective memories. However, one of the important developments for us in organizational psychology as a result of this was emergency preparedness. These are the steps organizations take to make sure you're safe before, during, and after an emergency or natural disaster. These plans are important for our safety in both natural and man-made disasters. After 9/11, many more companies began implementing emergency plans. The last several decades have also seen history unfold in other ways as well. The economic recession and the 2008 financial crisis highlighted the importance of how companies and their employees are contracted together. And after the election of the United States' first African American president, Barack Obama, that made clear that anyone can achieve the highest positions in virtually any organization, regardless of race or socioeconomic status. However, I believe the most significant development in historical events for organizational psychology has been the development of technology and the pace of that advancement. Unlike in previous generations, individuals now have virtually instant access to email and, for many of us, full work capabilities all from our cell phone. I can remember as a child watching Star Trek with my father and thinking it would be wonderful to be able to pull out a small device from our pockets and be able to speak to anyone in the world or off of it. Now, this is no longer science fiction, but science fact. The advancement of technology at great speeds has some positive effects. First, individuals now have communication 24 hours a day from almost anywhere, enabling us to respond faster to emergency situations and make important decisions. Second, it has increased productivity for many individuals and organizations. However, it does have some drawbacks. Workers are now at organizational disposal almost at all times and can be reached by their cell phones. This means being called in over a weekend or holiday. Also, because communication lines are always open, it has blurred the line or boundary between work and non-work lives. For example, even today as I give this presentation, my supervisor at work has messaged me twice in her attempt to find a document on one of our clients. I will need to respond to her request, which will take some time away from my preparation for classes or even relaxation time. See, the availability of instant communication and technological access does cut both ways. Number 2, describe the socialization process for graduate students in our program. Is the program successful in socializing newcomers and creating job embeddedness? The second main question we're going to explore is the socialization process for graduate students at Liberty University. The process will be different depending on whether one is a traditional student, which is attending classes in person, or online, such as myself and many in this class. To begin with, we must define what organizational socialization is. According to Jackson Britt, organizational socialization is the process by which an individual makes the transition from outsider to organizational member. This process may begin through the recruitment process, where both the individual and the school make a determination whether they fit with one another. This usually begins with the student reaching out to the admissions department and beginning the process. It's somewhat like an employee filling out a job application. After a determination of fit is made by both, we proceed to the onboarding process, which is basically all of the formal and informal practices, programs, and policies engaged in by the school that make a new student a member of the organization, or in this case, Liberty University. For us, it meant speaking to our academic advisor, the financial aid process, and taking the graduate student orientation class. It could also mean the first meetings with your instructor and classmates as well. Now, the socialization process is much broader than the onboarding and takes significantly longer. In the Liberty University Online Graduate Program, I feel much of the acculturation that occurs, or the assimilation to the culture, depends on the individual. Liberty University makes its resources available. However, it is up to the individual student to engage in this process for themselves, and some are able to proceed at a far increased rate, while others may never be fully acculturated into the program. The socialization process in our graduate program can be best explained by utilizing Chow et al.'s 1994 Six Dimensions of Socialization approach. In it, they define 6 dimensions we must all proceed through to become socialized into a new culture. The first is history, and this can be thought of as long-held beliefs and customs of the university and our graduate program. It may also include its strategic vision and other information about its culture. For example, I learned that Liberty was founded by the Reverend Jerry Falwell and based on the Christian teachings. Furthermore, even though the program is founded on scientific principles, the mission of Jesus Christ is always at the core of what we learn and do. Finally, I even learned that Liberty joined Conference USA and is 2-0 in football. Go Flames. Second dimension is language. This is the organization-specific language of the university and graduate program. It can also be thought of as jargon. No matter what the job is, we all have language that is specific to what we do. In my current profession, I write ASAMs daily and clinical reviews. At Liberty, I learned the term module to reflect the work area we're in, and canvas to mean the operating platform. The third dimension is politics. Not many of us like this term, but these are the unwritten rules and most influential people in the organization. In actuality, I've learned in this dimension that my primary course instructor and classmates are very important to my success. However, the financial aid office can still control a significant amount and make my life very comfortable or very complicated. In this dimension, we also learn what it is to avoid and what best to avoid certain topics from time to time. The fourth dimension is people and the establishment of relationships with them in our work groups. For example, the people I learned that are critical to me are my peers in each of my scheduled classes, as it that they will be discussing topics with and through much of the learning will also come. Also, the principal or class instructor is critical for developing a mentoring relationship with. This allows for smooth communication and more comfort in the group. The fifth dimension is organizational goals and values. In this step, we learn what LU stands for and believes in. For me, I learned that this is a Christian-based university and that I can achieve my highest goals with. It got me quite fired up about the process, and this is exactly what Chow intended for this dimension. Sixth and finally is performance proficiency. This step intends to make us proficient and honorable students that have learned how to operate within the system and get our coursework completed as well as we can. Number 3, how can an organization reduce or prevent work-family conflict? Throughout our careers, almost all of us will experience some form of work-family conflict at one time or another. Work-family conflict occurs when individuals face incompatible role pressures between their work and family domains. Researchers typically distinguish between conflict involving work interference with family or family interference with work. According to Greenhouse and Betwell, there are 3 main forms of work to family and family to work conflict. These are time-based, strain-based, and behavior-based. For example, if I had a combative meeting with my supervisor, the one I mentioned earlier at the end of a day, and at dinner with my family, I had a difficulty expressing my views, or they could plainly see that something was wrong, this would be an example of work to family strain-based conflict. Another example would be if I had to leave work unexpectedly during the day to pick up my son at the doctor's office or a school nurse. This would be an example of family to work time-based conflict. Therefore, work-family conflict is bi-directional and can work both ways for 3 main reasons: strain, time, and behaviors. So what can an organization do to reduce these conflicts and facilitate the best working conditions for the individual employee? In fact, organizations can play an important role in reducing these conflicts. These are now known as work-family policies, and they help employees execute both work and non-work activities. These organizational supports are becoming more and more prevalent in the United States and other Western industrialized nations. Some potential examples would be on-site daycare for employees, telecommuting, flex time, and job sharing. Cossack and Michael note that family-friendly benefits have been shown to positively attract better talent to organizations and improve employee attitudes in the organization. I recently submitted a proposal for a work-family policy at my current organization, requesting we incorporate an on-site med clinic for employees. I noted that in the past year, I've missed work or been late 3 times. In all 3 occasions, I needed medical care, and an on-site clinic could have remedied the situation, and I would have missed considerably less time due to the availability of on-site medical. As noted in Cossack and Michael's research, these policies would account for fewer absences, accidents, and turnover. However, one support I do have in my current position is positive supervisor support. Many employees fear repercussions and negative consequences for taking vacation or personal time. However, my supervisor has always been incredibly supportive of my non-work needs. There has been a significant amount of research done on a supervisor's role in reducing work-family conflict. It's been found that supervisors do have a critical role in either reducing these strains or increasing them. Recently, a new term called family supportive supervisor behavior has become popular. This can be defined as actions and responses by a supervisor that acknowledge work-family issues, supports the employee's attempts to balance them, and role model creative strategies to manage the work-family conflict. I mentioned above the supportive relationship I currently have with my direct supervisor, and she exemplifies these behaviors. For example, when I recently discussed my time strain-based issue with school interfering with work, she discussed with me how she appreciated my situation, acknowledging those issues. Then she told me that I have vacation and personal time built up that I could take at any time. Finally, we all have some personal responsibility to bridge the gap and work on these conflicts for ourselves. Personal coping steps, such as proper management of our time and planning our days, have been found to moderate the relationship between work-family conflict and strain in recent research. Additionally, we can also discuss flex time arrangements with a supervisor, reduce the hours we work, live closer to our job, and seek out family members that may be able to provide some assistance. Number 4, imagine that we've been asked to develop a performance assessment program for employee development. What techniques could we use to adequately evaluate employee performance as comprehensively as possible? In our future occupations, we may be asked to assess the performance of employees. There are many different ways in which this can be done. In 1989, Murphy proposed there are 8 different ways we can assess job performance. However, it is never usually measured directly, but through indirect ways. The first is through paper and pencil test. I think most of us have taken these, and usually consist of how we feel and executing different functions we are expected to master. For example, I recently completed a performance review with my supervisor, and both her and I filled out this type of assessment and then discussed the strengths and limitations we both listed. Second is job skills test. A skills test is an assessment used to provide an unbiased, validated evaluation of a candidate's ability to perform the duties listed in the job description. Typically, a skills test asks a variety of questions in different formats to see how the candidates perform on the job task. Third is on-site hands-on testing, which is an evaluation that tests the trainee's ability to satisfactorily perform work practices, procedures, and any other skill taught in a training program. For example, I performed this type of testing when working in a factory setting, and my direct supervisor observed my work procedure and process. Fourth is off-site hands-on testing. Rather than taking tests at an office or job site, candidates take tests at home or at any other location of their choosing. Off-site tests are usually not proctored and most commonly taken online using an internet-connected device. In many ways, we use these types of tests at Liberty on a daily basis. Fifth is high-fidelity simulations. These are healthcare education methodology that involves the use of sophisticated lifelike mannequins in realistic patient environments. For example, my daughter is currently in training to become an RN at St. Francis University, and during her on-site clinicals, these types of simulations are utilized. Sixth, symbolic simulations. In psychological assessment, an experimental method used to investigate the behavior and psychological processes and functioning of individuals in social and other environments. Seventh, task ratings or rating scales. Many employers ask their employees during performance reviews to assess how they feel they have performed in a specific task between certain numbers, such as 1 for not well at all and 7 extremely well. These are often known as Likert scales and are very popular in performance reviews. Finally, eighth is global ratings, the name given for a rating based on the rater's integration of many attributes into a single unified rating. In the assessment of performance, most models distinguish between in-role and extra-role performance. In-role performance evaluates the extent employees meet their performance expectations and perform well at tasks that make up their current job. For example, this would be me facilitating group therapy sessions for my current clients. Extra-role performance is assessed through non-task behaviors that employees are also expected to perform. In my current role, this would be attending clinical meetings with peers and my supervisor on assisting a new team member during the socialization process. Both in-role and extra-role performance should be assessed because both have a dramatic impact on the smooth functioning of any organization. To adequately evaluate employee performance, I'd use a combination of these methods. I'd look closely at the potential sources of error that can be involved. For example, if a rater has not been able to observe performance, their ratings may not be objective. Furthermore, ratings may be biased if a rater either likes or dislikes those they're rating, or a different performance standards are used. In my present situation, my supervisor may rate me as superior. However, another clinical supervisor may only give me an average rating. Therefore, a combination of multiple raters should be utilized. I would attempt to use at least 2 raters in any review who both know the person being evaluated and have had the opportunity to observe their work product, both in and extra role behaviors. I recommend that a combination of task ratings be accomplished by these raters at least 4 times a year in addition to the employee's own self-task ratings. This can be combined with some measure of objective performance measure, such as a method of evaluating how well an individual, team, or organization accomplishes tasks and goals. Finally, what are some possible organizational constraints and how can they lead to counterproductive behaviors? Unfortunately, we must discuss a topic that may not be pleasant, but nevertheless is critical to the functioning of any organization: counterproductive work behaviors. These were defined by Spector and Fox in 2005 as volitional acts that harm or are intended to harm organizations or people in organizations. So, for example, if I become disgruntled and want to harm Liberty University or Dr. Wood personally, these would be examples of counterproductive work behavior. There are many varied organizational constraints that an organization can engage in, or an employee may perceive that can result in motivation to engage in these behaviors. They may be poor equipment, unnecessary roles, and the wasting of an employee's time. Spector in 1997 proposed that this may result in frustration to the employee, which may result in employee theft of company products or equipment. However, there are other counterproductive behaviors that are far more common or higher base rate. These include absenteeism, being away or off of work, abuse of others, which can be defined as inconsiderate behaviors and microaggressions, all the way to violence, workplace incivility, which is rude and discourteous behavior that violates social norms, and social undermining, which can involve social exclusion and spreading negative rumors. These most common forms of counterproductive behaviors can be a result of many different factors and organizational constraints, as well as how the employee perceives a particular constraint. Depending on many variables, including experience and personality traits, not all employees will perceive them in the same fashion. One constraint that has received considerable attention is abuse of supervision. which can be defined and thought of according to Temper as subordinates' perceptions of the extent to which supervisors engaged in the sustained display of hostile verbal and nonverbal behaviors up to physical contact. This can result in counterproductive behaviors of additional absenteeism, abuse of others, workplace incivility, and of course, social undermining. For example, in my current professional assignment, a coworker had a rather hostile relationship with her supervisor that culminated in her supervisor giving her very low performance ratings, which may possibly be warranted or not. The coworker proceeded to begin undermining her supervisor and telling other employees that her supervisor was not only biased and unfair, but she treated clients of the organization with hostility and disdain. These were rumors and not facts. This all had an overall negative effect on morale in the department and resulted with both of them in the human resource office. There are other, less common or low base rate counterproductive behaviors as well. These include production deviance and sabotage, employee theft, workplace violence, drug and alcohol abuse, and sexual harassment. While these are less common, they are much more serious and can result not only in termination from the organization, but criminal charges as well. My personal history is very acquainted with drug and alcohol abuse, and I am not alone. According to recent research done by Frone in 2006, 14% of the U.S. workforce report illicit drug use, and 3% report that they've engaged in it on the job. Unfortunately, I was among these individuals at one time in my life. While I take full responsibility for my actions at the time and have received the assistance I needed and have now been in recovery for over a decade, there were some organizational constraints that did contribute to this. First, there were the social norms in the company at the time surrounding my drug use. Employees were encouraged to work long hours at a very high rate. Therefore, how employees did this was up to them. Many coworkers, as well as my direct supervisor, engaged in cocaine use, and this introduced me to a substance that, although was illegal, was not only tolerated but encouraged. Second, there was a drinking and drug culture within the organization that was encouraged. It was routine that on weeks where sales goals that were exceeded, a party at a local bar with hard drinking followed. This promoted both drug and alcohol use. On an individual level, it was not long before my alcohol and cocaine use introduced me to new drugs, eventually Percocet, which is an opiate painkiller that produced extreme euphoria. I began regular use, which led to a 10-year addiction. What followed was increased absenteeism, low work productivity, depression. Eventually, I was let go due to chronic absenteeism. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.